Yo, you reader are closer to death right now than at any other time in your entire life. Besides, even the longest of human lives is flabbergastingly short. James 4:14. Ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor, that appeareth for a little time, and then vanisheth away. This reminds me of when my family used to use a tea kettle to boil water. The kettle's whistle signified when the thick water vapor started. That twirling steam would waft in the air for a few seconds, then mysteriously vanish forever. In fact, science has done nothing to increase the potential human lifespan, just increase the percentage of people who reach that potential. This will likely never change since the domineering scientific principle that governs life, gravity, works 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to batter everyone down. Even achieving the lessening of gravity would ironically accelerate the tearing apart of bodies, proven by the terrible condition of returning astronauts after having lived outside our atmosphere. Since life-giving gravity holds us together while simultaneously tearing us down, this is a no-win situation. Science even fails to guarantee everyone a certain number of years, as many people throughout the world continue to surprisingly die when only 1/3 or half of their expected number of years expires. Some readers may want me to answer, is death a real being, such as a Grim Reaper figure? Honestly, I am unsure. Some may find it beneficial to see death as a personal being, while others may find that idea counterproductive. What is important to know is that death is not any type of friend, even though some professing Christianity have mistakenly stated such. Christian scripture itself says, the last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. 1 Corinthians 15:26. It was said that God's original plan involved spiritually transfiguring life forms off this earth and unto himself after a certain testing period instead of dying. That would leave death unnecessary for making room for new life. But the traditional narrative continues with a major abscondence of God's creatures from his favor, and from then on, the wages of sin is death. Romans 6:23. Considering these observations, the popular notion that the saved attain heaven immediately after death should be viewed as complete bollocks. If this notion were true, it could be seen as a good thing to murder righteous people, since you would be blowing them into heaven. Or for the saved to kill themselves to attain that desired result instead of working to preserve their God-given life. This notion certainly caused resurgence of the pagan idea of death being the friend that escorts saved souls into the afterworld. And if immediate heaven after death was logical, I would presume that all those convinced they are saved would rejoice upon hearing a diagnosis such as terminal cancer. Since most do not and many have the opposite reaction, I must assume that most just wish that to be true while their alleged certainty collapses under close examination. Besides, the Bible does not teach that the righteous attain heaven immediately upon death. In fact, that would render pointless a primary mission of Christ's second coming, to gather the saved to heaven. And Scripture teaches that Jesus is the one who holds the key of death, not death itself or anything within us. So I assume that all spirits will remain earthbound until Christ's second coming. So reject the preposterous rubbish of death being heaven's doorway. But although death, essentially the most dominant destructive force, is never anyone's friend, it has been the catalyst for some incredibly wonderful benefits. For an example of good coming from bad, consider prairie potholes, wrecked patches of ground presumably formed by ancient shifting glaciers having torn up the landscape. Although these craters prohibit agricultural use and human living space, they absorb melting snow and rainwater, thereby reducing the risk and severity of downstream flooding. And since they fill with water and grow aquatic plants, they inadvertently feed and breed many species of waterfowl who are dependent upon them. Now the benefits of death, since our world reeks of foul, putrescent corruption, are that it absolutely limits the amount and duration of suffering that anyone can inflict on another. Instead of continuing endlessly, all suffering must necessarily be as fleeting as life itself. However, that never excuses mistreating others, whether human or animal, as undoubtedly the purpose of this short life is to develop and test character, determining where we will spend a potentially endless future life. And consider the arrogance and pomposity of men in power. Imagine how much worse it would be without inevitable death, promising to reduce them to the same end fate as deranged homeless people babbling nonsense. And consider that so many women on dating sites brazenly refer to themselves as goddesses and queens, demanding to be treated as such. Death leaves its warning notice by slowly destroying their physical beauty and sexual attractiveness, leaving ugliness, with one exception if they die young. So death is of major importance to keep evil in check, as it is God's just punishment upon fallen creatures. Actually, what I equate death with the most is the second law of thermodynamics, which is physical death's primary component. This universal law, solidified beyond any doubt, establishes that entropy, an irreversible deterioration, regularly occurs in all physical structures and systems. Though energy cannot be destroyed, a minute quantity is always changed from a useful to a useless form. Hence, everything wears out and eventually, quote-unquote, dies. And by extrapolating the second law to its ultimate end, we say that the entire physical universe will suffer a permanent, quote-unquote, heat death. That is, unless a supernatural force intervenes to stop and reroute it. Finally, fear not them which kill the body, but are unable to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Matthew 10:28.